I've had this for 27 years that I've been doing this. There's one thing that I've always been able to say is, "Oh, we're about to enter change." And I can say it for
Mm,
the next 27 or 50 years.
yeah.
It is the common denominator, and it's just what changes next. What
Hmm.
changes next? We had a pandemic before. Now, you've got a change in the market. You've got a change in interest rates. You've got a
Yep.
change in the economy. You've got war. You've got, I mean, you name it. And for me, the whole thing has always been it doesn't matter the change. It matters how we respond to it.
It's time to get inside your own head. Begin with the psychology behind your behaviors and fuse it with an acute understanding of self-awareness, emotion, storytelling, body language, and more. Then look at it all through the lens of the latest neuroscience research, broken down to its most digestible form. And you've arrived. Enhanced messaging, deeper connection, heightened influence, and a greater impact on the world. Welcome to the neuro side of influence and leadership with René Rodriguez.
Welcome, everybody, to today's podcast. And today I am doing it a little bit differently. I'm bringing on a live guest for actually the first time. And when I was thinking about who's going to be my first guest, the first person that came to mind was today's guest, Ryan Grams. And the reason is, to be quite frank, I wouldn't have any of this studio, this audio, or even would have been able to reinvent during the pandemic without him. And the journey that he and I have been through understanding the changes, reinvention, and putting to work a lot of the principles that I think we're dealing with in Amplify, it wouldn't have happened without him. And so I think, one, this isn't anything other than a conversation with the person that I look to for when it comes to understanding this new transition, this new world, and how do we create video, audio, and show up in today's world. So I'm going to bring Ryan on stage. Ryan, good to have you, man.
Thanks for having me, man. This is exciting. It's like coming full circle, dude. This is great.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. And I want to get right into it. I mean, let's get right to the reality of the fact that, I mean, you and I met a long time ago when it came to creating my first speaker reel. And I remember
Yeah.
giving you a lot of really old footage, and I said,
Yeah.
can you turn this garbage into something? And it was my first reel. I mean, I think we spent, I don't know, 7 or 8 days literally working on it.
Yeah.
And sort of as the world changed, you've always been an incredible videographer, one of the smartest humans I know in general knowledge, and then also one of the most innovative technologists that I know. And
Thank
so
you, man.
when this whole pandemic hit, both you and I saw 100 events go away, and I called you and you're like, "Yeah, my clients aren't wanting to do video anymore." And I looked to you and I said, "Well, I said, this is the best opportunity that either of us have run into." And you gave me that look of, "Okay, why?" And the reality is that nobody was ready, and you were used to
Yeah.
working with people that were talent. These were the people
Yeah.
that were the on-screen actors and people that were used to it, and they didn't have any business. And now the talent became people like me, entrepreneurs, business professionals, CEOs, executives, people that were now thrust onto camera that were really now didn't know how to do it. And so I told you that
Yep.
this is the opportunity we have to teach people how to do it. So let's begin there with, just give, 30 seconds of your background, only 30 seconds because I want to get into it. And then I want to get into sort of that conversation and what you went through because it was a real reinvention for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, right when we first met, yeah, I was more of a shooter editor, working on a lot of kind of solo projects. But it's interesting between then and now, you've watched me go from just a solo guy going to more of a producer role where I'm putting together larger projects and having a bunch of people. And since then, I've done projects for UPS and Ferrari and some other big brands. I was down in Austin with 80 people, an 80-person crew. We threw the after party for the Eagles when they were here in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, a few years ago, 2018 now. So I've had a lot of different things happen. And then, yeah, like you said, since the pandemic hit now, my specialty is helping people get their content creation studios built up, whether it's a small one, big one, whatever it might be, and then helping as a consultant in a lot of ways with some of the technical stuff, especially as it relates to the video and audio stuff. And I still serve as a executive producer here at my production company up top as well, creating content.
And so here you were down this path of doing the typical filming video
Yeah.
stuff. And we come along and say, now we got to teach people that have zero experience how to show up on camera, and then even how to create their own studio, and
Yeah.
literally having to reinvent how they see themselves. And so talk to me about that first initial conversation we had.
Boy, yeah, it was a lot of fun because yeah, Renee knows I'm such a nerd with all this stuff, and so he's always collected a few small cameras and lenses and whatnot for, especially for some of your speeches that you're doing at different places. You want to be able to set up a camera and get a capture some of the stuff, especially since you never had any good stuff for your reel back in the day. So I knew that he had some cameras, and Renee was like, "Hey, can I make this camera work in Zoom?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, man? No, no, you can't." And but you're like, "No. Is there a way?" I'm like, "Okay, let me look into it." And then I just nerded out for like a
18
a
hours.
day, 18 hours. Yep. And I was like, "Oh, I figured it out, Renee!" Like, and so we hopped on Zoom, and I had this camera working, and that was the start. Just kind of taking a lot of tools, and that's always what I've been doing is saying, how can I make this do something else? And they're still, surprisingly, 2 years later, like Canon doesn't have like a really, really plug and play solution. That's a camera
Mm.
that you can just plug in. You still need some software, some adapters, and it's still kind of clunky. And so
And I
I've
think
built a business around that.
and I think that's what's interesting is that, this world wasn't ready
Yeah.
for these
Yeah.
changes. And I think everybody listening here, we're entering even more changes. And here's the thing. I've had this for 27 years that I've been doing this. There's one thing that I've always been able to say is, "Oh, we're about to enter change." And I can say it for
Mm,
the next 27 or 50 years.
yeah.
It is the common denominator, and it's just what changes next. What
Hmm.
changes next? We had a pandemic before. Now, you've got a change in the market, you've got a change in interest rates, you've got a
Yep.
change in the economy, you've got war, you've got, I mean, you name it. And for me, the whole thing has always been it doesn't matter the change, it matters how we respond to it and how do we
Hmm.
understand the human condition during it. And so I
Totally.
go yeah, and so I go back to that and say, "Okay, all right." So we created this and we started seeing an opportunity to say, "Okay, people don't know how to show up. Even the basics. They don't know where to put their heads. They don't know how to put their hands. They don't even understand." And you came up with, still to this day, something I've used every day, the acronym that I think has changed all of us, which is CALL,
Yeah.
C-A-L-L. And so tell us about CALL.
Call. Yeah. I remember we're talking about going, I think, live with Dave Savage. And we were like, okay, I needed something to be able simply explain this thing. And I was sitting with my wife and we came up with call, camera, audio, lighting, and location. Those are the 4 letters. And yeah, those are the things that we got to be thinking about in these virtual interactions and now in content creation as well. Getting your camera in the right place, whether it's the height of it as well as the quality of it. You got to make sure you have good audio. Got to have the mic again in the right place. It's important not to. You had like a really great mic, but you were pointing it the wrong direction. You had it like this. Like, yeah, no, look at this mic. It sounds great, doesn't it? Like, no, Renee, you got to point it over here. It's like little things
Oops.
like that.
Yeah.
That's audio, and then lighting, of course, being able to have a soft light. So here's my light. If I can kind of cover that a little bit, it's a large source. Same thing. I mean, Renee's got a really awesome light that's giving you it's making your appearance look better. And again, where you position that is also very important. And the last one, location. That's what's in your shot. I remember we were talking about in Pulp Fiction, right? When she draws that little box, and I think we wound up putting that in your reel. And that's so true, right? You always talk about what's in the frame. And right now, you and I both, we have our frames, and I made little adjustments to my background to get my little Wally robot because I knew it was going to be cropped off. He's usually off to the side, so I wanted to see that. Yeah, your
Yeah,
books, they're
I
out of
just noticed
frame, man.
my books are even out of frame. It's just like
Yeah.
it's like never ending. And I think that for me, rethinking me thinking that camera was number 1 in that.
Mm.
And so you spend all this money on a camera and then you turn it on and you realize you look like shit. I'm like, okay, so the camera sucks. No, because I've watched you use a lesser camera and make things look like it's the best movie you've ever seen. And so you realize, okay, so what is it? You said, Renee, it's the lighting. You
Yeah.
can have a mediocre camera, even a webcam with the proper lighting,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
look great. And
Yeah.
then the big aha to me was that if I could choose any of them, it'd just be audio, the best
Oh,
audio
absolutely.
possible. And I
Yeah.
think when we created that first video to kind of show people the ins and outs, and I'll put a link in the description here of sort of the first studio. I think it's fun for people to watch that first studio build up of when we take one piece away and we build it back up. of how you really see the difference between professional lighting and maybe washed out lighting or natural light. And I remember you coming over to the studio, and I had 10 windows in my, not studio, my office.
Yeah.
And I was so happy with my windows, and you convinced me to black them all out. And I had such a hard time with it. And this is what I want to talk about, though, because if you're listening to this, the hybrid world, it's not a virtual world anymore, but it is hybrid. And people got a taste of being able to have a meeting with somebody, they can see their face, and I didn't have to drive or fly somewhere. That's not
Hmm.
going to replace everything, but it is going to happen a lot more often, and it does make things more efficient. And so if you really think about it, like I had to rethink my studio. Excuse me, that's sorry. It's listen to me saying it because I've adopted it. You told me your desk is no longer your desk. It's your set. It's your stage. And that mentality, it is a paradigm shift. I mean, it
Yeah.
really is a paradigm shift where I had to go, okay, because I work at my desk, and number one is comfort and utility and access to files, my computer, all that. And I had to rethink going, hold on, I like to look at the window this way, but the lighting looked like heck, like heck, like shit. I'm gonna swear. Sorry. It looked horrible. And so, like, but if I twisted it this way, there's a shift in behavior change. And of course, we resist it. Now all of a sudden I look better. And oh, black out the lights. Well, I didn't want to, but black out the lights. Now I can control lighting for all day long. And we were doing stuff from morning till night. Sometimes I'm doing things in
Hmm.
Singapore that have to start at 7, 8, 9 o'clock at night or
Hmm.
6 in the morning. And so
Yeah.
when I looked at that element, the behavior change that all of us are going through, and I think the big thing I want to talk about, and I want you to kind of expand on this, is moving from a mindset of my desk is my desk to my desk is now my set and my stage. Talk to us about that.
Oh man, yeah, it's a big shift. A lot of people ask this question, "Hey, is my room gonna work?" I'm like, "Well, honestly, like I'm my office used to be my closet at my studio here. So I've got a great big room over there where I used to build up my first studio, but it's a shared space as in all my employees are over there all working. And suddenly I was doing Zoom calls all day, every day, and everybody had to be quiet, while Ryan's on the call. And so that wasn't gonna work. So we took our old gear room, and I don't know, it's maybe 8 feet wide right here, the wall behind me. And so taking a space that is not even this, in this case, really an office at all, you can make anything work because that's the magic of video and whatnot. You can, it's all about just kind of painting this picture of where you place things and get the lighting in a good spot. So yeah, but that's the thing. You gotta potentially make some compromises, some changes to the layout of your room. Think about the windows. In your case, yeah, because we needed a reliable look. We needed to always look the same. Even in your new studio there, you've got this great window with this great view, and we're like, we're gonna have to black it out. So it doesn't
Mhm.
exist anymore,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
my right behind me, that blue is actually a window overlooking a
Yeah.
pond,
It's
water
gorgeous.
pond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But because you need to be recording a podcast or be on a call and it has to always look the same, that's why we have controlled lighting. A lot of my clients have windows, and that's great because they're only doing Zoom calls, but I'm always asking, so, are you going to be using this after dark, or early in the morning? Because we'll need to make sure we can compensate for that. But because they don't need the same exact look all the time, we can make that work. But for people that need to have a reliable, consistent studio, that's where it's important to
And
have
the
control.
thing that I tell people that if you're making a mistake thinking this is about vanity, it has nothing to do with vanity. Does it look better? Yeah, you look better, but it has everything to do with the
Mhm.
problem that Zoom ran into. And I want to talk about that for a minute because this is all I want to put this in a business context, these
Absolutely.
solutions. The challenge with Zoom, and people are talking about Zoom fatigue and what's happening in the world, and most people are kind of, just saying, I'm just gonna cross my arms and wait until this is over. It's not what's gonna happen. The problem people didn't like Zoom and weren't good at it is because of the concept of disassociation. I got that from a Harvard article way back in the beginning, and I started
Mm.
looking at disassociation in conversations. Of course, there's dissociative behavior, there's disassociation in serial killers, but what did it mean in Zoom? And it meant that if, like, I always use the example of if I'm in the, Thanksgiving dinner and we're all having dinner at the table, inevitably there's a TV on in the other room. People are watching a
Mhm.
game, there's just something, there's a movie on. And so you can hear the movie in the other room, or maybe you look over and you see it to your left. and you see that there's characters, you know that there's something going on, and there's some plot or a story or a game, but you can't fully see it, hear it real well. So you disassociate from it and you pay attention to what's in front of you. That's a job of the reticular activating system, the RAS. And I talk about it in my book in detail about how that RAS is determining where do I pay attention. It's like when you buy a car and you think that nobody's driving the same car and you drive off the lot, everybody knows driving it.
Yeah.
It's about how we pay attention. And so the biggest solution to get away from disassociation is to replicate as close as possible the in-person experience. And that's where we started getting into like camera placement. Like, why do some people, like you had the one video, you said nobody wants to see up your nose. I thought it was hilarious. And we used to draw Google on people's faces that we'd use, if we can see your nostrils, we'd draw the GOO when the OO would be your nostrils, and GLE, just to show them like that's how you show up for your customers.
hmm
And so when you started replicating the in-person experience, now all of a sudden it's harder to disassociate. I could see your face. The lighting was good. I see the facial expressions in your eyes. The camera is eye to eye versus me thinking I'm standing over you or below you, and I can hear you, right? The audio pierces the screen, and now it feels like I'm next to you. Even if I'm not paying attention, I say, "Hey, what's going on?" All of a sudden, you're like, "Oh," it wakes you up. And so talk
Yeah.
about, because you had to do that. You're trying to replicate an in-person experience when you're creating film. How does that work in Zoom and all these virtual meetings?
Yeah, well, obviously, in the middle of the pandemic, we were all completely starved of real human interaction, right? And it's just like you said, we're used to speaking to people in person, and so we started looking at how could we actually, as close as possible, replicate this. And obviously, things like having a good microphone that's close to you so you can hear you. That's the number one thing. And then when you start looking at camera, it's like, okay, we got a great camera, but now my screen's over here, my camera's up
Yeah.
there, and I'm looking down here. And it's like, okay, well, how do we get that closer? And we started exploring with some different options. And what we landed on was using a teleprompter, which most
Yeah.
people know, right? From like Anchorman, right? And seeing like the words on the screen so you can read.
Well, just even the
And
teleprompter, if I could just
yeah,
interrupt you, like I only thought a teleprompter was only for words. That's
yeah,
all it teleprompter. It's going to prompt you what to say. Television prompter. And you're like, "No, dude, it's a screen. You can put anything you want on it." I'm like, "Wait, what? What does that mean?" And then you put the Zoom call on there and I'm like, "Wait a minute. There's a camera on the other end of on the other end of what I'm seeing, or on the other side of your face. So I'm looking through you the same way I would in an inhuman experience, but now I can see the camera sees me, I see you. But the value to me was I didn't miss facial cues and they
hmm
didn't have to miss mine. And so
yeah,
now I could see when they were interested, when they were engaged, disengaged. I can see if they were paying attention, not paying attention, if they were text messaging. I can see all of it. I mean, that
yeah.
was ingenious.
Yeah, no, it's great. Even like this conversation that we're having right now, I love it. We're both using our setup. So I can actually, I'm looking at you, looking at your eyes, you're looking at me, looking at my eyes. And so that we can have eye contact and work on those facial cues. Even just now, I saw you go like you're going to say something. I was like, okay, great. Let them say something. So that all those little things we're used to as human beings. We need
Mm.
that. And so it was really important to try to solve that. And so we found the small little teleprompter. It's got a little 9-inch screen, and how do we make that work in your Zoom calls, and setting all that up is a big part of what we've been doing over the last couple of years.
And if relationships, so I tell people, if relationships and trust is important in your business, then trust and relationships are built on these little nuances through facial expressions and social
hmm
cues. It's the passing the ball back and forth. Like you said, I think that's a great example. Like you saw my mouth open, like I was going to say something. That's a cue of
Yeah. Yeah.
make room for the next person. Pass the ball back to Renee, right? And we've all been there where people, if you're playing a sport and somebody dribbles with their eyes to the floor watching the ball, there could be people under the basket waiting for the pass, and you're like, dude, pass the ball. Same is
hmm
true in meetings where people
hmm
talk too much. And so I love that. So going back to the in-person experience, I think the other part that really was profound to me was the eye level of the
Oh gosh.
camera.
Yeah, you were talking about that earlier, right? The perspective. So my experience in film and video, right, is it's the perspective of the camera. How zoomed in, how zoomed out are we? Where are we placing it? Is it bird's eye view angle? Is it a worm's eye view angle? Is it right eye level? And generally speaking, obviously we're all different heights. So in real life, yeah, maybe when I get on a call with you, Renee, I should raise my camera up because I'm always looking up at you because you're so tall and I'm so short. But generally speaking, right, we're at eye level. We're all kind of on average looking at this same height.
Mm.
And so if your camera isn't at that height, right, then you're giving your audience a different perspective. And that different perspective says something. If your camera generally, like on a laptop, you got the little webcam, right? Your screen is on your desk. You're looking down and your camera's really low. And there's some laptops, can believe it or not, the webcam is above the keyboard. It's on the bottom of the screen. And you see these giant towering fingers as they're typing. It's like, what on earth is happening here? And they're just towering over the, and you're like, oh my God. So that's where the height of the camera comes in. Yeah, we have another video that talks about just if you're using a laptop, put your laptop on a shoebox, raise it up a little bit so that you can get closer. And and you don't have to have a teleprompter to get close to eye contact. Take your zoom window if you're using like a laptop webcam and just make sure it's always up at the top, right near your camera, as close as you can be. So you're getting closer to that thing. And then you can look at your camera. You can look at the camera and then, go between your camera and your screen because you do want to read those cues, but you want to give your audience as much as you can. What I tell people is you want to give your audience the benefit of that eye contact as often as you can, even if you have to occasionally look down to look at them, always be going back. It's a little bit of a dance. It's not as good as a teleprompter, but
but eye contact is a dance. I mean, we talk about it in body language. There is a dance. I look at you to make sure you're looking at me. Then I think off and I come back to you. You're staring at me to show you're interested. I come back to you to see if you're looking, and then you talk, and then you look away, and I'm looking at you to show you that I'm interested. There is they call it the dance of eye contact when real communication. Because if we just stare at each other with no movement, and there's just constancy, you just moved away, right? You look down to laugh, right? Because it breaks the awkward tension of too much eye contact. And so even what I'll do is let's say if I'm reading notes that are maybe off camera a little bit, I'll deceive by thinking if they're upright, I'll look left for a little bit to think and I'll come back. And then maybe I'll look down. Yeah, I'll come back. And then I can look to my right and then there. So I'm not looking at the same spot every time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes it more natural. And the other piece too is I tell people, if you're off camera or you're looking down, this is sort of a even in-person thing. Can you look at the floor? Yes, you can. As long as you don't talk to the floor. If you notice, even I paused to look at the floor and then I came up to talk to you. And I think that's the big piece. Look off camera and then come back and then talk. And so those are little elements of how to use that environment. But I think that people don't really don't realize the importance of the level of the piece. So now audio, that was the big one, because here's the thing that when you taught me that audio, every microphone is different, right? And every microphone has a sweet spot. It's almost like this bubble that you have to speak into. Like, for example, I'll move my mic a little bit as I'm testing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, testing 1 back. I'm in the bubble. And it makes a huge difference. And if you don't understand where that mic is, it changes everything. And you I mean, how embarrassing. I was talking backwards into the mic. It looked great on camera. But it didn't
not if you know that you're using it wrong, right? If somebody who understands how mic works sees that, it's like, whoa, like, no, you're not. You're using it wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's the piece is that reality. Most of us listening don't understand that.
Yeah,
and I think we go back to what's the purpose of the mic. I mean, I can tell my meetings. I'm like, hey, how's your mic? They go, it's great. I go, is it on? Yeah. I go, tap it once, and you hear, and you know that it's not even on because they sound like they're in a tin can.
God.
I'm like, but it's again, I want to go back and stress the business side of this. This is about creating better human connections with the cards that we were dealt. Is anything going to replace in person? No,
of course not.
No, we're not trying to, and I'm not. And there's no way to do that. But if you're going to limit me and not allow me to see, or if you're going to give me the opportunity to have some of my meetings instead of a phone call to this, I'll take this. I mean, who does phone calls anymore? I mean, literally.
Right? Yeah.
If I'm driving, but if I'm in my meeting, I'd much rather see you so I can at least see your facial expressions. I can see what's going on, and we can connect. And if I can make slight enhancements to that, now all of a sudden everything becomes better. And so now location, you spend a lot of time in helping me sort of redesign the location.
Can I go back to one little thing on audio real quick?
Yeah.
So
let's do that.
In audio, you were just talking about, people say, oh yeah, my mic's great. Are you using it? And they don't know that they're not using it. Most applications, especially I know in Zoom, there's a little test audio button under your settings. And I tell everybody I meet, before you hop on any call, I still do this before I hop on any call. My habit is I go into my audio settings and I hit the little test audio button and I say, check, 1, 2, and then it'll play it back. Check, 1, 2. And you can tap your mic if you want to make sure that I know what I sound like to my audience. Because it's still, like you're using a computer, there's a microphone built into your laptop, there's all these other ones. So you got to make sure you're using the right microphone, your settings are good. And even if your settings are right, sometimes it still sounds wrong. There might be a bug or something happening. So if it doesn't sound right, then I'll quit it. I'll restart if I have to, and I'll do it again.
I mean,
To
how many
make
videos?
sure.
How many videos do we have of us going, how's this sound? And how about this? How's this? If I'm this far away, how's that sound? I mean, I think I have 400 or 500 videos and audios of us going, okay, testing one, how's it sound? And if you don't do that, you don't even know what's going on. I mean, even every podcast, I do a 5-second recording to make sure it's recording.
Yeah.
Because I made one mistake of doing a podcast and it didn't record.
Oh my God. I remember when you called me.
Oh.
Geez. I was like, dude, you gotta test it. I'm sorry that happened, but come on, man.
Basic 101 rookie stuff. I mean, but you have to, if you're not making those kinds of mistakes though, you're not even in the game.
Oh, absolutely.
And I remember Joel, and we've done this in recording Amplify, came to me halfway through and he had this look in his eyes and I'm like, what happened? He goes, I plugged the cord into the wrong thing and we didn't get audio. I'm like, we missed that transformation that we just had. And he looked at me and I said, okay, high five. Good job for catching it halfway through instead of the end of the course. We still got a day and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Does it burn? I said. And he said, he just nodded his head. And I'm like, good. That means you'll never do it again. Don't worry. Ryan's done it. I've done it. Everybody I've worked with done it. It's all good, man. And it just means you're in the game. You got to make those mistakes.
One other little tip there, very related. It seems like an idiot-proof kind of thing. How could this happen? Is in the industry, we call it double punching. That's when you hit record twice. You double punch the record button. So you think you're rolling. And then I've done this more recently than I'd like to admit, where you're looking back at your footage and everything is terrible. Like, what the heck happened? Why? Because we're rolling when we think we're stopped. So we're just carrying the camera around. And then you hit record again. And now you stopped. But you you think you're shooting what you're supposed to be doing. So even in content creation, whatever you're doing, you could still accidentally double punch. So I always, as a habit now, I look over at the red record button. Am I actually rolling? Yes. I gotta have that confirmation that it's going.
Yeah, it's funny. Like I do it with my camera all the time, where like my phone camera. It's you put you double. I guess I didn't know it was a thing. You double punch and all of a sudden you're holding it in your hand, getting your thigh, and listening to conversation that and then the part you wanted to record, what didn't record. But I think the when you created our studio here, and I don't know how much you spend on these stupid light bulbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 light bulbs.
Tally lights.
Tally lights. And I'm like, why? He goes, well, it lights up red when it's on. And I'm like, I don't really need that. And you go, when you're in the studio and you're wondering which camera's on and which one's recording, do you want to actually dissect and take a look and pull it, or do you want to just see a red light? And I'm like, okay. I love the feedback loop of the tally lights now. Just having those feedback loops is critical. But I want to go back to the business side of this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because, if you're listening to this, we're talking about Zoom, we're talking about all that sort of stuff. But it can be argued that in today's social media world, that a lot of this stuff doesn't matter. Right. You're going to hear people just hit record and get started. And I agree for a while. And here's what I mean, that you've got the challenge that I'm seeing is that people are now starting to get the quote unquote best practices. And when everybody's starting to use it, we've lost uniqueness. We've lost creativity. We've lost something that truly stands out. And so I think about it as a journey, right? If you're, let's say you're martial art, you're a white belt, at least get on the mat. You're not going to be good at it, right? You're going to get tapped out. You're going to lose, but you're on the mat and you're better than the person in the stands.
Totally.
Right? You've got a little more experience. And that might be, you're just using your phone or a horrible audio and all those types of things. Then you go out and you kind of progress and you start building one piece of this at a time. And you actually have a startup one that you don't even charge for. You're like, I did the work for you guys. Here's 150, 250 bucks. Here are the links on Amazon. I think it's call upgrade / amplify. I believe that's what it is. And you can get all the basic pieces for super cheap. That's a good starter kit. And I think if you're listening to this, I'll put the link in here so you can at least connect with Ryan and get that starter kit for you. And it's not purchased through Ryan, so this isn't a sales pitch. This is literally these are the links. Get them from Amazon. He did the work. But those of that want to upgrade, there's a million things, and I would urge you to follow Call Upgrade and follow Ryan Grams and watch what he's doing. And I think the funnest part of it all, though, and this is where I kind of want to start, doing the last segment on, is how you and I have had to go through the same changes that our listeners are going through.
Yeah.
Here we are. We created $10,000-$20,000 videos that are cinematic, masterclass quality. The stage can be a scary place, right? All those videos that were just amazing, and that literally helped sell millions of dollars. And yet, when you put them on social, no one watches them. I mean, our AmpCon video that cost over 10 grand, I got 24 likes, and going through all that stuff, it was like brutal. And you and I are purists in a lot of ways. And, the frustration around, well, people should be watching this stuff. They just want simple sugar content and they don't want anything deep, blah, blah, blah. I sound like my parents. And when the reality was, we needed to grow and continue to grow as well. As much as we were pushing people to grow in the social media world, we needed to grow. So I'm watching you even starting to adopt, the concepts of the hook and the videos that, short form, and starting right away with the content and all of this sort of stuff. But before we get into the solutions, because I want to kind of touch on where we've got a lot of this from, but
yeah,
your journey in rethinking, even letting go of your purist mentality on certain ways to really adapt to the new way that social is. And now this isn't the only way. This is a new piece of the puzzle. And I want to talk about that. But tell me about your journey through that.
Boy, yeah. I mean, I've been in my current and previous life as a video producer, creating content. That even when we spoke about the first video I did for you was a speaker reel, right? A form of advertising, something that you could email to somebody or play at an event or whatever it might be, to promote, hey, hire this guy to come give your presentation, whatever it might be. That's my world. I create advertising, I create marketing material, I create, content, video content, as well as I create like short film content and feature film content. I've worked on a bunch of stuff. And it's a different medium, really, right? Versus what we're talking about now, like new TikTok and Instagram Reels, some of these other mediums that are basically that old traditional content doesn't work on those platforms. You put it up there, yeah, you'll get your mom and a few other people to like it and click on it or whatever it might be, but it's not going to get that same kind of organic views using like the AI algorithm on it, because it's not really easy to swallow. It doesn't have, people don't know the context of what it is, and they don't care. They don't care.
Right.
They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't know who you are. They don't care. You got to give them a reason to care. And so when you have a captive audience, that's a little bit different. If you're playing a movie trailer, or if people are into, if you have a big following, yeah, they might want to watch.
And that right there is the first fork in the road that I had to learn. I got this from good friend Neil Dingra. Follow him at Neil Home.
So good, Neil Home.
Yeah, and when he's like, do they know you or do they not know you? But that was one question. Like,
Yeah.
Are you known or not known? And I was like, well, I'm like, and do you have a captive audience, or do you have an audience that's scrolling? And that's the piece. You go back to the book, A Million Followers or Hook Point, Brendan Kane. And he's like, you have 3 seconds to capture someone's attention. And I'm like, oh, that's just so dumb. And I'm talking about how dumb it is as I'm sitting here scrolling Instagram. And it dawned on me, every time I'm scrolling, I hit the scroll, my finger goes up. I'm basically saying, whatever's on my screen sucks. This doesn't capture my attention. Scroll. Okay, that's boring. Scroll. Nothing stopped me from scrolling. Scroll. And I'm sitting there complaining about how people do that while I'm engaging in the exact behavior that I'm complaining about. And so it illustrated a new part, saying, okay, so there's this concept where I have to, quote unquote, stop the scroll. And everybody talks about it. Even you and I talked about it. We're not qualified to give advice on this, right? And we're learning this. And I would say we make better videos. Yeah, and we make better videos than most people, but we're still learning. That's the beauty.
Yeah.
Is that even when you think you got it, you don't, and you got to keep learning. And the thing about, I think, that made us survive and thrive during that time is that we learned fast.
Yeah.
Fast, right? And I'm watching your videos. You went from videos that didn't have a hook, that were really well produced and super creative and quirky and funny, to now you're getting the hook right away. And the hook is written and it's awesome. And now I'm thinking, man, Ryan is going to be deadly when he masters this, because your editing speed and skill and being able to do it is great. But here's the piece that I had to go through. I was copying the strategies of like Gary Vee and Tony Robbins and all the people that sort of in my industry that I wanted to emulate and be like, but I wasn't known like they were.
Hmm.
Now, that
Yeah,
doesn't
you
mean
didn't
that
have a
people
big
don't know
following.
me. Yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean people don't know me, but I'm not worldwide known the way they
Hmm.
are. And they aren't, I'm not a celebrity. And so it's like it's a pill of humility to say, okay, hold on a second. How do I speak to people that don't know me? And that's where Neil came in and he said, Renee, he goes, you have to speak to them. That's where his following shifted. Because he started over just over a year ago with 0 followers and followed his own strategy. Now he's at over 110,000 followers. But not only that, that following has gained him to be, a desired speaker at all the big events.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's like, he started creating content for people that don't know him, which requires a hook. Now, the Amplify formula, frame, message, tie down, doesn't translate directly to social, because you get people starting with a frame. I remember the first time I went and people were like, scroll, falling
Scroll.
asleep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't work. But that doesn't mean you throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah.
What it does mean is you have to add the hook, which is another form of a tie down. Instead of
Yeah.
tie down last, you tie down first in a way that captures attention to somebody of what their interest is. Usually it's
Hmm.
about making or saving money, some sort of life hack. And it's also about an extreme, how I went from broke, poor, or bankrupt to owning, 200 properties. Well, what was
Hmm.
that? How was that? And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden
Yeah.
you move into it. And those extremes are found at the extremes of the hero's journey. When you fall, there's a bottom extreme to the rise to the top. And if you can just touch on each one of those extremes, that captures attention. Now, the ethical side of it is where I've had a problem. Here's the number one thing you can do to grow your
Hmm.
business. Well, really, my colleagues and the people I work with would be like, Renee, really, number one? That the number one? Like, you did your research? Show me the paper that shows me that's number one. Those are the kind of jerks that I'm around. And I say jerks funny because, or facetiously, because I love people like that. So I had to be on this journey to say, is there a way for me to do this
Mm.
ethically? And so I remember asking Neil, I go, can I say one of the best ways? And he's like, yeah, it works. I'm like, okay, now I'm finding my style.
Yeah.
And that's what I think you and I talk about is how do we take the science of what's going on, what's working in the marketplace, but yet innovate on top of that.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Totally.
so you started doing these videos. What's going through your mind as you're innovating here?
Yeah, well, Neil Home, that page, we literally went and scrolled through a bunch of his stuff. And obviously he was at AmpCon, I heard him speak. And I think he was, when I was building your studio, you and him had a chat. And so I got to chat with him a little bit too, which was great. And it was, yeah, he was just such a perfect example of somebody, like you said, who's gone from nothing to a whole bunch of followers. And we tried to break down, okay, well, technically speaking, what are some of the things he's doing? Yes, the hook. That is the most fundamental piece of what we're doing. The other thing is the editing style. It's not to say you can't just pull out your phone and create content and post it. Yes, you got to start somewhere. But then you have to be able to start, okay, what can we do? And the simplest thing, the first thing we started doing was tightening up the edit. And I'm a very
Mhm.
excitable guy. I'm very, I've got a big personality. But even that, we're cutting out all the breaths. And still keeping it stylistically. It doesn't feel super awkward, and you don't really notice it. It's so weird when I watch the finished edited piece and then go watch. Sometimes I go and look at the original clip. It's like, man, I'm talking so slow. I'm just breathing. But like
Right.
this platform, it needs to just be bam, 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 bam. You just got to put it out. And so we're cutting out all the kind of little in between breaths and whatnot, and keeping the energy up and keeping it moving. So the hook, and then the editing style, and then the captions. Man, it's been so weird and cool to see what has happened in my world in video production with the ability to add the words on the screen. It used to be just a huge pain in the butt. I remember you told me about some platform you were using. There's all these weird little
Yeah.
tools that were cropping up. And finally, in my world, Adobe Premiere is what we use for editing here at Up Top. They've added caption support where you can generate AI-based captions and then edit them very, very easily, add some style. And so we basically came up with our style, what we wanted to have. So we open with a white background with a text that's a title that's similar to what I'm saying. And then it goes into word for word for what we're doing. So we have like the hook of whatever, say no to nostrils is the one that we just did. And I'm like, and then the caption just says no to nostrils for that. And that's the title of the thing. So we're establishing a graphic title, the hook, the editing style, and then we have the captions throughout. And then we try to have some fun. And Neil does a great job of this too, with different graphics or different sound effects, whatever, little things that you can add. And again, that's something to aspire toward, but it does require an editor of sorts. Even I don't even edit those anymore. I don't know if you know that, Renee. I've got Max is I did like the first one or two and then kind of train my guy in. And now he's doing them all, which is great. And so we'll batch them out. I'll sit down, I'll write like 6 or 7 of them, and then we'll sit down for a couple hours. My social media gal, Alyssa, will sit down here together and we'll just bang through them over like 3 hours. That I feel like it takes me forever to do that. I want to get faster at that. Every time I do it, I get faster, but it still for me is like a chore. I'm not used to that. So I'm just trying to get better at it and doing it. I've noticed every time we did it, the first time I did it, the first video we did, it took that whole 3 hours to do one. It's like, oh my God, this is painful. Is this what I got to do every week? And so now what we're doing is trying to build up a library and then as well be flexible. If something is timely, okay, let's schedule, we have our schedule, but let's shift things around so we can get this thing that is really important to have right now. So it's all those things. It's the hook, the writing, and I'm still trying to figure that out. And then it's the editing and then the scheduling and trying to batch it out and get better at it and do more at once,
And this is why it's an overwhelming change, right?
Yeah.
These are all new behaviors, new business focuses. These are requiring, to work with editors, to work with people. But it is, if this is the way you want to go, this is what you have to be doing. And my suggestion to people, again, this is something I'm in the journey of learning. And when you can understand your brand, and when we go through the amplified process of asking yourself what makes you unique, and you've listened to those podcasts, I hope you have. If not, go back. You can use those as content sources to be able to build the hook. And I'm gonna have Neil actually probably on one of our next podcasts here, because we've got an event that's coming up. His event, excuse me, it's called Forward, and it's going to be myself. It's going to be Gary V. We're going to have Ed Milet,
cool.
Brad
Sweet,
Lee.
I love Ed. Oh man, yeah, everybody, all the rock stars. This is great.
Yeah, I mean, this is. I mean, Neil is not messing around here. He's got this whole thing together, plus a bunch of other really great content folks that are there, but all people that understand this world. So I'll give you this piece as you're listening to this too, that within this world, it is overwhelming. And part of why Ryan and I got on here was to really talk about and be vulnerable to the fact that we have to relearn too. And as good as the videos were, I remember I did one video holding my phone up with crappy audio, but the hook was right. And it gets more views than some of the other ones with not, it's the 3rd best video I've got. And I'm listening to it. I can't even hear it. And yet it's because the hook and the captions were there.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind. Talk about another shift in what's happening. And so get started, but you got to get in the game and understand that it is shifting. And that is great advice for anything that you're facing. Because guess what? Once we figure this out, there's going to be something else. We're probably going to have to figure out 3D holograms. We're probably going to have to get, bit more into virtual reality. We were doing at AmpCon, we did augmented reality, which was really cool, but few people adopted it and watched it. So but that's part of the price of figuring it out. And guess what? I'll do it again next year. I'll do it again, and I'll do it the following year. And someday it'll be just normal. It'll be normal, or there'll be something different. And guess what? I'll adapt then too.
Exactly.
That's the game. And so, Ryan, as we close out here, what can you tell if I'm listening to this and I want to get better? Let's talk about. We talked about Zoom. But if I want to make it really easy to capture videos with my phone, you gave me what I thought was the coolest solution, a little white cord, a little white plug adapter that plugs into the wireless thing that I've got right here, the Holy Land, or whichever this one is right here.
Yeah.
Hollyland, or a Rode or whatever that plugs into my phone. And now I have a lavalier. Now all of a sudden I've got great video from an iPhone, or whatever you use. iPhone's better, but whatever phone you use, and I've got great audio. What can you tell people on how best to maximize the equipment they have?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a couple things, and we touched on these earlier, right? You got to be thinking about, like you said, your audio, making sure you have a good mic. The other thing is the lighting. The simplest thing you can do is stand with a window in front of you, right? And hopefully not direct sunlight, because direct sunlight is really, really hot, first of all, and sharp and doesn't look great. But if you've got ambient light coming through a window, that's the easiest thing that you can, okay, let's just start rolling. We've got good ambient light, good soft light coming through. You've got your good audio, you've got a good camera. And the other thing is, we talked about, right, the position of the camera. I would say go on Amazon, spend $20, get some sort of stand for your phone, something that you can stick it in and just set it there, right? Because you don't want to be doing that, especially if you want to get better at this, and that's going to mean doing multiple takes. I typically do about 10 takes for my reels right now. I want to get that down to like 1 or 2. Like, I'd love if I could just bang, 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 but I'm not there yet. And so I have a stand. I have a dedicated camera right here where I do my reels, and it's a sideways camera. So I'm not just using my phone, but even if it was just my phone, I would still put it on a stand so that I can just hit record and do my takes. And yeah, a stand, a light, good audio.
We'll put a link in the show notes on whatever stand you recommend
Sure.
too.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
could
I
send
can
me
give
one.
you a link for sure. And then I think it's just getting your reps in. When I left the last AmCon, I was there helping you shoot it and get some cool coverage of the event, and of course just soaking in all the good stuff. And there were like 3 or 4 people that at some point said, "Yeah, man, you just got to get your reps in." And that was, for whatever reason, the big thing that stuck out to me. And that's what I'm trying to do, is just do it. Just force myself to do this and do it over and get better at it and try to learn these things and get my reps in. Yeah, I think that'd be my encouragement.
Get your reps in. Absolutely, dude. I couldn't agree more. Well, Ryan, it's a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on. Actually,
Oh
our
man, this
first
is great. Ton of fun.
interview like this on the podcast. And as always, brother, you're innovating, you're pushing, and we're going to continue pushing through this. And I appreciate you sharing all your skills. For those that are interested in connecting with Ryan, give us real quick your intro.
Yeah,
We'll put it also in the
absolutely.
links.
Yeah. Honestly, the best quality content that we have right now is all on Instagram. So at C.A.L.L Upgrade, C.A.L.L Upgrade. That's the brand for all this stuff that we've been talking about. Ryan Grams is my personal Instagram, and then ryangrams.com. You can see my work as a cinematographer, but I don't know that, I'm not looking to get hired too much as a shooter these days, but yeah, callupgrade.com as well. We have some of our kit and whatnot there, and you can see, see some of the cool solutions that we've been coming up with.
And for those that are serious, you're building out studios now. So I think
Yeah.
we'll put the short little video of the one you did for me here. I know you've done it
Yeah.
with a lot of my clients, a lot of people we work with.
That's been a
Um,
ton of fun. We just did one for the Mall of America. Yeah, they have this studio that's on a cart that they can wheel around to different rooms. There's all kinds of different crazy solutions we've been doing too. It's a lot of
and
fun.
that's what I love, is that you'll look at where people are at and
Yeah.
do it from there. And so I think that's really good. So again, this isn't about aesthetics, folks. This is not about how making you look better. This is about making you build trust faster in this hybrid world. And a lot of these things apply into creating social content. So with all that being said, make sure you go out and get the book, Amplify Your Influence. And if you want to learn more about the Amplify course, go to Amplify My Life, or go to meetrene.com. If you like this, subscribe, comment, do all that sort of stuff, and make sure you follow Ryan. And we will see you next time. Thanks again.
Sounds great. Thanks, Renee.
Thank you.